You know, most would ask, hey Stonesy, do you really record on one of those nice little seats in the back there that you have in your profile picture? No. Would you ever want to record in one of those seats in the chair that you got back there? No. So what are you recording on? A couch. Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Today we are reading pages 166 to 180. Yeah. I mean, I really don't got anything else to say this episode. Last episode we learned that the science club is for cool people and everyone else is losers. So, you know, if you don't take that to heart, then, you know. Also, we learned, do not rip out your teeth for a science exam. If you think that's confusing, go to the last episode and find out yourself. So yeah, I'm going to record a good plethora of videos, and I think I've explained to you the situation. So, you know, if one day I stop posting, just assume I've done something else. But, yeah. So, without further ado, and without any more interruptions from me speaking too long and very fast, because I miss doing audiobooks, let's begin. No, of course not, Chris said again. Look, guys, I've got to back to my homework. Maybe we could do something next Friday, okay? They said sure and okay, but Chris could feel the distance between them and his old friends growing. It was painful transition, but it was probably for the best. Bye, guys, Chris said and shut the door. In the living room, Chris's mom was leaning over Emma, who was sitting on the couch. Count to 3 out loud before you do it, okay? Emma said. Before you do what? Chris said. His mom looked over him. Emma's got a loose tooth. I've got to pull it for her. Chris felt a stomach lurch. Well, don't do it while I'm here. You know that stuff grosses me out. Why couldn't this family tend to distasteful matters in private instead of in the middle of the living room? It's just a sign of how unrefined they are. Mom laughed. Wait till you're a parent. None of this stuff has grossed you out as a kid until it'll bother you anymore. Chris shook his head. I don't know about that. If I have a kid, he'll definitely have to pull his own loose teeth. Chris played the scene in the tooth extraction and went back to his room. As soon as he was alone, his thoughts turned to the science club lock-in. The idea hit him like a jolt of electricity. Loose tooth. Of course, that's the answer. Chris had walked past the Cool Beans coffee probably 1,000 times, but he had never gone inside. For some reason, it hadn't felt like it was for him. It was too sophisticated and adult, full of professionally dressed grown-ups and sitting in their laptops and cardboard cups. But today, he was going to change. Chris was going inside. He was swung open the door and immediately greeted by a dark, toasty smell of coffee. The paintings local artists hung the cafe's brick walls. Chris had never told himself how not to be nervous, but from now on, he was kind of placed where he belonged. Hi, Chris, San waved at him over Malcolm and Brooke were sitting. Their table strewn with open textbooks, notebooks, and coffee cups. Get a drink and join us. Great, I will. Chris called back. He studied a menu board over the counter. It was confusing than anything he had studied in class. There were mochas and frappes and cappuccinos and lattes. There were single shots, double shots, decaf, half calf. Chris had never taken so much sip of a coffee before. He had no idea what any of these words meant. This pretty young woman at the counter said, May I help you? Sure, I'm just not very experienced a coffee drinker, so I don't really know what I want. She smiled. How about I just make you something I think you'll like? Chris was relieved of the responsibility out of his hands. Sure. Do you like chocolate? Of course, I'm not stupid. What kind of weirdo doesn't like chocolate, Chris thought. She smiled again. Let's try an iced mocha, then. Give me a couple of minutes. He turned her back to him and poured some different syrups into a machine. Chris couldn't decide if her actions looked more like chemistry, wizardry, or wizardry. Shortly after, she returned with a huge clear plastic cup filled with whatever appeared to be rich chocolate milk topped with whipped cream and chocolate shavings. It looked like the world's fanciest milkshake. The price she quoted was $2 more than he expected. He hoped his new friends didn't see him have to dig through his pockets and his backpack for a change. He took his expensive beverage and joined Sam, Malcolm, and Brooke to their table. They were all drinking hot coffee from paper cups, and compared to theirs, his milkshake-like drink looked childish. He'd admit it was delicious, though. So, it looks like we're going to France this winter break. Again, Malcolm was saying. I really wanted to do Italy, but my mom can pass up the shopping in Paris. I'm going to be so bored to tears. I think we're doing the Caribbean cruise this year. I guess it'll be okay, Sam said. He turned to Chris. We were talking about family vacations and how we'll never get any say in where we go. Same here, Chris said. He hoped they didn't ask him about where his family had gone on vacation. Chris' family vacations are always the same. His parents took a week off in the middle of the summer, and they rented a cabin in a state park a couple of hours away. They spent a week fishing, swimming, hiking, and cooking out. They were always hot and buggy for the most part, and they had fun. But Chris knew it was a poor people's vacation. Oh, that looks good, Brooke said, nodding toward the drink. Is that a mocha? Yes, Chris said. He was going to have to study up on coffee lingo. His parents drank coffee, and he's just kind of brought from the grocery store and made in the house. Mine is too, she said. I got just hot instead of iced. Chris felt less self-conscious about his drink now. You need to loosen up around your new friends, he ordered himself. They wanted invited to join him. They wanted him there. It was time for him to start acting like he belonged. So what kind of results do you think the experiment will produce? Dan asked, looked around the table. Well, clearly we'll be growing some type of tissue, Malcolm said, sipping his coffee. I just don't know what it will do. It will do something, though, that's for sure, Brooke said. Hopefully nobody will end up in the emergency room like last year. Kristen was choking on his coffee. Wait, what? Brooke laughed. Some kid didn't follow the instructions right and ended up having a couple of fingers reattached. It wasn't his fault, though. He ended up transferring to Miss Harris's class, where he was less likely to maim himself. The experience was perfectly safe if you know what you're doing, and that kid clearly didn't, Malcolm said. Speaking of knowing what you're doing, if we're calling ourselves a study group, we better get down to studying. Chris was usually already home when his mom came in from work, but today she beat him there. There you are, he said and came in. I signed your permission to the school thing. I was worried when I didn't see you. I was just about to call and check on you. He was sitting on the couch with a glass of iced tea, her bare feet propped on the coffee table. She didn't move, but extended a hand and a paper. You join a study group with meets after school, Chris said, pocketing the slip. His mom laughed. If some other kid told me that, I might think he was lying. He'd run around after school about who knows what. But I believe you. I know, I'm a nerd, Chris said, sitting beside his mom on the couch. I'm proud you're a nerd, she said, smiling. I was wondering, Chris said. Might it be possible to have a small increase in my allowance? Mom took her feet off the coffee table and sat up straighter. How much are you talking? Chris had to calculate a figure that wasn't outrageous, but still covered the price of expensive coffee drinks and study group meetings. $10? Mom furrowed her brow and made a low whistling sound. And what do you need $10 more for a week for? Is this study group actually? We meet at Cool Beans downtown, and I need money for coffee. Gotten hooked on the stuff already? His mom said, shaking her head. Listen, kid, those frou coffee drinks are real money suckers. One gal I work with used to buy one every day, and when she quit the stuff, she was amazed how much money she saved. The fact is, we're lecturing him. We're not promising. Why don't you guys study in the library? His mom said. The library is free. Chris felt a wave of annoyance sweep over him. Mom, I don't start the study group. I just joined it. Well, maybe you could suggest meeting in the library? I'm sure it would save everybody a lot of money. Chris rolled his eyes. If I suggest that, they'll think I'm poor, which I am compared to them. His mom sighed. They're just your friends. They don't care how much money you have. You shouldn't care about how much they have either. Mom, Chris said, the verge of losing temper. That's not the way the world works. She sighed. I know it's not. I wish it was, though. He looked at Chris with a sad smile. Okay, I can give you $5 more a week, and that's all. I'm glad you're making friends and take school seriously. Study hard, so you can get rich and support me in my old age. Thanks, Mom, Chris said. This time, he didn't object to when she gave him a hug. Chris was buzzing with excitement when he walked into Mr. Little after school on Friday. He knew the lock-in was going to be a transformative experience, probably the most important experience in his life to date. He hoped it would complete the experiment to Mr. Little's satisfaction and gain the approval as well as the approval of the entire other science club members. Chris wasn't the only student who was excited. As he entered the classroom, he felt a high level of energy. It felt electric. Everybody was talking and laughing. Some people stood and paced instead of sitting in their desks, too restless to sit still. Chris still took his usual seat behind Sam. Sam turned around and grinned at him. Your first lock-in is a big day for you, right? Yeah, Chris said, smiling back. It is for me too, Sam said, but it's even bigger for you because it's your first time. After tonight, you'll be a full-fledged member of the science club. All eyes on me. All mouths closed, Mr. Lowe called from the head of the classroom. I know you're excited. Heck, I'm excited too. But there's still some very important directions you follow exactly or your experiment won't work. He pushed his glasses up to his nose. I have also taken the liberty of ordering some pizzas, which should be here shortly. Cheers rose from all over the classroom. It's going to be a long night, and you better conduct scientific research on an empty stomach. But while we wait for subsistence, allow me to explain more specifically about what you'll be doing tonight. As you can see, I have set up private cubicles for each of you in the lab. In your cubicle, you'll find a long table and cot for napping. On the table, you'll find a Freddy Fazbear Mad Scientist kit. There are a few chuckles in the class, and one kid said, Isn't that kit just a toy? It's most definitely not a toy, Mr. Little replied, his voice turning stern suddenly. If you treat it as one, you'll be at your own peril. He held up a kit for everyone to see and open it. In this kit, you'll find a container of Faz goo in a petri dish, like this. He held up a vial of pink glop in a small dish. You will empty the Faz goo into a petri dish, then come to the sacrifice. The tooth, Chris Hatch whispered. Yes, the tooth, Mr. Little said, grinning wildly. You will use the pliers. He held the pliers to extract the tooth of your choice. I would advise you near the back. When your wisdom teeth come in, you won't have to worry about crowding. Chris heard a sharp intake of breath of someone behind him. All of a sudden, his stomach felt queasy at the thought of a tooth extraction. He was glad that he figured out a way around it. If you can't handle this part of the experiment, now it's time to leave. Mr. Little looked around the classroom. It's time to separate the real scientists from the wannabes. Chris looked around the room. Some kids looked scared, but none of them moved. Good, Mr. Little said, nodding approval. I like my students to be fully committed. After you have extracted the tooth, you will place it in a petri dish of faz goo, and that, he said, rubbing his hands together, is when things will start getting interesting. You see, the faz goo will not only take the tooth to stay alive, it will make the tooth believe it is still part of you. A tooth can believe something? Brooks asked. Well, it can still feel it's inside of your mouth, Mr. Little said. The faz goo is very powerful. When you touch it, it creates a tendril, a connection, that slowly pulls red blood cells from your body. The blood cells need the faz goo and fuel the experiment. And there's the amazing part. Over the course of several hours, nourished by just a few of your red blood cells, the tooth will grow gums and will form from the full mouth, and the mouth will open up and tell you something, and I promise, no matter how old you live to be, you'll never forget. Chris looked around at the classmates, all of whom were wearing an identical look of disbelief. You'll see, Mr. Little said, looking around at all the stunned faces. It will be amazing. Once the mouth has told you what you need to know, it will die. I have provided a biohazard bag in the cubicle. You will disappear. Dispose of the mouth and the faz goo in the bag. After you have brought me the bag, so I can dispose of it correctly, you are free to go. Mr. Little looked toward the classroom door and smiled. But first, pizza! He waved a delivery guy to come in. You have 30 minutes to eat, drink, and socialize, Mr. Little said. But after that, it's time to get to work. Chris grabbed a couple of cheese slices and a paper cup of soda, and sat down with Sam, Brooke, and Malcolm. I guess this will be the last pizza I chew with my left back molar, Malcolm said, but he sounded more amused than scared. I'm a little worried pulling out one of my teeth will mess up my orthodontia, Brooke, who had a mouthful of braces, said. Yeah, your orthodontist was going to be mad, Sam said. Will your parents be mad too when they find out? Brooke shrugged. Not if I tell them it was a science club assignment. They'll let me saw off my own arm if they knew it would improve my chance of getting a good college. My parents would too, Malcolm said, and they laughed. Let me saw off both arms and it would get me into Ivy League. My mom would definitely be mad, Sam said. Brooke laughed. Oh, she will, won't she? I forgot. Forgot what? Chris said. Brooke laughed and managed to get out. Sam's mom's a dentist. After they laughed some more, Malcolm said, That reminds me, Chris, I don't believe you said what your parents do for a living. Chris felt a flutter of panic in his belly. He couldn't possibly tell them his mom was a cashier where people paid their electric bills and had dad fix people's cars. My mom's an electrical engineer and my dad's a mechanical engineer. Wow, 2 engineers for parents, Sam said. You must be really good at math. Chris nodded. This part, at least, was true. Okay, Mr. Little called. Time to get to work, scientists. Chris was glad he had revealed to Sam and Malcolm and Brooke what he was going to perform an experiment about following out his own tooth. He couldn't let anybody know he had figured out a way to game the system. Chris entered the cubicle and filled the petri dish with faz goo as instructed. Within a couple minutes, he could hear the grunts and groans, and the students in the other cubicles labored to pull out their teeth. In the cubicle nearest him, he heard a scream, followed by a sickening popping sound of the tooth released from its root. Chris figured it was the sake of realism, he would grunt and groan a little too. If he faked a few minutes, very believably, he thought. Then he reached into a pocket, pulled out the ace in the hole. His right side of his mom and pulled his sister's tooth the other night. I made him remember when he was little, he declined money from the tooth fairy in order to keep his old baby teeth. He didn't know why he would be willing to let them go, especially have been a weird little kid, but now the weirdness is paying off. Chris submerged his old baby tooth into the faz goo when he touched the goo. He thought he might slight suction sensation in his fingertips. He pulled the hand away, but a tendril of pink slime connected his index finger to a petri dish and the tooth in it. The tendril was stretchy like mozzarella cheese when you lift the first slice from a hot pizza. Now there was nothing to do but wait for the tooth to get what it needed from him. They laid down on the cot, making sure to break the tendril and connected his finger to the faz goo. Chris closed his eyes and let himself doze. Soon he was dreaming about the future successes. He saw himself as though he was a character in a movie, opening the letter granting him a full scholarship in an Ivy League university. He saw himself doing research in a lab in a university. The lab was bright and clean and filled with the most cutting-edge equipment. The distinguished professor with a light lab coat stood behind him and looked over his shoulder, smiling at the good work he was doing. Chris saw himself in a black cap and gown. Walking across the stage, the university professor handed Chris a diploma, and Chris smiled at his picture taken. But then, when Chris smiled, it was immediately clear that something was wrong. Blood dripped from his lower lip and down his chin. His mouth was a black cavern, framed by a bloody mess of gums. Somebody had pulled all of Chris's teeth. Chris startled awake. He was disoriented at first, waking up in a narrow cotton cubicle. When he saw a tendril strung between his finger and petri dish, he remembered where he was and why. Sitting up, Chris heard movement and whispering coming from the other cubicles. Would it be whispering come from the mouth the experiment was supposed to create? Chris pressed his ear to the partition in hopes of making out what it said, but no words were discernible. From where he was, the whispering just sounded like soft whooshing in the wind through trees. But when he heard the voice of the student in the cubicle goes, this. Wow, she said, her voice filled with awe. Wow. There's a rattle of plastic, which would now been the biohazard bag, and then sound of footsteps. Chris pushed one of the cubicle partitions open just a crack so he could see the student leave. It was Brooke, but the look on her face was different than her usual smart, collected expression. Somehow, her features seemed softer, more open. Her eyes were wide and full of wonder. She walked up to Mr. Little and handed him a biohazard bag. Brooke rested her hand on Mr. Little's forearm and looked him in the eyes. She told me everything, Brooke said. Mr. Little smiled. Good. Nice work, Brooke. You're free to go. Brooke smiled back at Mr. Little and wandered toward the door. Chris had just about closed the small opening in the partition when he saw another student, a tall, dark-haired boy he met yet, emerged from the cubicle across the classroom. Just like Brooke, he wore an expression of amazement. He walked up to Mr. Little and handed him a biohazard bag. He told me everything, the boy said, placing his hand on Mr. Little's shoulders. Mr. Little smiled and nodded. Good. Nice work, Jacob. You're free to go. Thank you, the boy said, as though Mr. Little had given him a gift. Chris closed off a partition. Clearly, the experiment was starting to work on some people, but then he checked the progress of the petri dish. He couldn't see any significant change. It was just the same old baby tooth, submerged in a puddle of faz goo. Ooh. Such a cliffhanger. I mean, it's my fault that we're at a cliffhanger, but, you know, it's like, still, such a pretty good cliffhanger. Considering the next episode is going to be the last episode, if I'm not mistaken. Let me quickly check that. Yes, I am right. Today, we have read pages 166 to 180, and next time we will be finishing off this book, sadly, with pages 181 to 194. The G in breaking is really just caressing the head of the number 8, if you look at it right. But yeah, now, when you think of that word, I don't know what people think when they think of the word caressing. It's probably something weird. When I think of it, I like to think of like petting a dog. Or, you know, just like petting one of my pets. Because I love my dogs, and I love my cats, and I love my pets. Speaking of pets, it's time to go to the Learning Corner of the day, doing it up Stonseys way, Bop. Today, we are learning about the Welsh Springer Spaniel. I feel like I'm saying Total Drama Island when I say that. Not that this dog would make it anywhere near Total Drama Island. This type of dog is not famous. This type of dog is weird. This type of dog has a weird face. It looks like it's someone standing, but its nose is where its butt is. I mean, look at that dog. Look at the puppy. It's so silly looking. It's so weird looking. But of course, before you make fun of anything or have a true opinion on something, you should probably research it. So if someone ever asks you to defend yourself on your opinion, you have facts and checks to back it up. Though a fact and a truth are two different things, because the truth of the matter could be something, but a fact can never change. So today, we are going to learn about the history of the Welsh Springer Spaniel, because you must know the history before you make fun of something or have a true opinion on it. So the history of the Welsh Springer Spaniel is that a dog identified as a Welsh Springer Spaniel is mentioned in some of the earliest records of the law in Wales, dating around 1300. Whether this dog is forebearer of today's Welsh Springer is a dispute. However, other evidence indicates the possibility of the Welsh Springer either developed alongside the English Springer or resulted from crosses of English Springers to Clumber Spaniels. Though land Spaniels have been used in Wales for some time before the Welsh Springers emerged in the recognized breed, the early dogs were probably not a uniform lot. At first, the dog shows from England, English and Welsh Springers, were shown together as one breed because the only difference at that time were their color. The Welsh grew in popularity, the breed came to America and was recognized by the AKC in 1906, and the breed failed to gain the support it needed. By the end of the World War II, it may have totally disappeared from America. New imports, and luckily new supporters, arrived in the Welsh, had enjoyed a steady, if modest, popularity as not as flashy show ring as the English Springer. The Welsh had made up for its in field. It is all-purpose, all-terrain hunter with a keen nose and a flush for the retrieve over land and water. So this dog does look funny, but it actually has a lot of good uses. This is a pretty good hunter spaniel, or a type of spaniel that hunts. I believe there was a hunter spaniel that we talked about before. But now you know about this cool dog's history, and how technically it's all a type of mystery and all could have started with a big bang bang. But what's the temperament of this dog? Is it mean? It could be a good hunter, but it could be mean. So the temperament of the Welsh Springer Spaniel is that It's less exuberant than the English Springer. The Welsh Springer Spaniel is steady and easygoing. It still needs plenty of hard exercise, however, as it loves to hunt for birds. It is extremely devoted to its family, but it's independent in nature. It is reserved to strangers, some may even be timid. A sensitive breed, it requires ample socialization, so social life. If you don't know what that means. So now, you know this dog is pretty social, pretty cool, pretty tempered, but it can still hunt. So, what's the upkeep? How do I keep this dog up and running? Well, the upkeep of the Welsh Springer Spaniel is that the Welsh needs daily exercise. I don't know if that's just speaking on the Welsh in general or the Welsh Springer Spaniel, but the Welsh need daily exercise, which can be met with long walks on a leash combined with strenuous games in the yard. It especially likes jaunts a field and makes a good hiking companion. It does best dividing its time between indoors and out. The coat needs brushing once or twice weekly and also needs occasional scissoring to neaten stragglers. So this dog needs a lot of work, but it's a pretty good hiking dog. That's good to know. Now, if you are a child, please cover your ears, for you do not need to know this part. If you are a teenager or an adult, please grab your notebooks, because if you own a Welsh Springer Spaniel, this is good to know. The health of the Welsh Springer Spaniel is that major concerns are CHD. Minor concerns are glaucoma, otitis externa, and epilepsy. It's occasionally seen with cataracts, which is sad. Suggested tests are on the hips and eyes. Just keep an eye on it. Get it? Got it. Good. And the lifespan for Welsh Springer Spaniel is 12 to 15 years. Wow, this is an old dog. That's pretty good to know, though. Before we get to the finale, we need to know the form and function. You don't have kids, you're a hunter. So what's the form and function of these dogs? The Welsh Springer Spaniel is a hunting dog. It should be a hard, muscular condition. It is no way a breed of exaggeration. It's slightly longer than tall, compact and possessing substance without of coarseness. It strives for a powerful and ground covering. The coat is flat, and water and weather and thorns and not so exercise, and the hindrance in the dog's work and flushing spaniel. The expression is soft. Looks kind, is a hard worker. Very nice. This is the type of dog you would hire when you're doing an interview. You should be like the Welsh Springer Spaniel. Look kind, but work hard. But now it's time for the tier list. 5. 5? 5? Well, 5 is the best, better than the rest. 4 is good, okay. 3 is better, or pretty much average. 2 is worse, oh no, oh gosh. 1 is the worst it ever can be. Now let's get to the tier listy. So, the energy level, exercise requirements, and playfulness of the Welsh Springer Spaniel is at a 3. Average energy, average exercise requirements, and average playfulness. Not very playful, unless you want to be playful. The affection level is at a 4. The very loving. The friendliness towards dogs and friendliness towards other pets is at a 3. This is kind of good news, but friendliness towards strangers is at a 2. So, you know, invite your brother. You don't like your brother, this dog can bite it. The ease of training is at a 3. The watchdog ability is at a 4. The protection ability is at a 2. Surprising. The grooming requirements at a 3. Pretty high. Cold tolerance is at a 3. Heat tolerance is at a 3. Average. The weight of both female and male Welsh Springer Spaniels is 35 pounds to 50 pounds. That is a wide margin. Wow. And the height of a male Springer Spaniel, average height, is 18 to 19 inches, and for female is 17 to 18 inches. I don't know who's been measuring all these dogs to get this type of mathematical average, but who knows. Oh my gosh, we are finally out of the Spaniel family, because next time we are going to be reading about... I'm kidding. So, hope you guys do a fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed the Springer video that's going to come out soon. And as well as the new dogs that we're going to be learning about. Because, oh my gosh, these dogs are adorable. So, yeah, hope you guys do a fantastic, wonderful day. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.